The stars shimmered like a frozen sea around the survey vessel Wraithlight. Its hull gleamed silver blue against the darkness, its engines humming softly as it coasted along the edge of a forgotten trade route. On the bridge, Captain Mara Ellen leaned forward in her chair, eyes fixed on the holographic display above the console. "There it is," she said quietly, "the distress beacon." The beacon's signal pulsed across the map in a steady rhythm, coming from an old freighter adrift ahead. Unlike many derelicts, this one was still remarkably intact. Its hull bore the insignia of the Horizon Corporation, a company that had gone bankrupt 50 years earlier. The ship's name was etched in faded lettering across its bow, Vigilant Dawn. "It looks like it has been here for decades," said Jalen Vey, the crew's technology specialist. He was a tall, wiry man with a scanner always in his hands, his curiosity about machines rivaled only by his curiosity about people. "But the beacon is active, and this is unusual. The signal has a pattern. It is not just an alert. It sounds like music." "Music?" Mara raised an eyebrow. "Yes." Jalen tapped the console, and the sound filled the bridge. The beacon's tone was not a mechanical wail, but a soft sequence of notes, repeating. It almost resembled a lullaby. Kaylin, the pilot, tilted her head, her short dark hair catching the light of the screen. "That is not standard procedure. Corporations did not design their emergency beacons to be soothing." Rix Calder chuckled. "Maybe the captain of that freighter had children on board. Play a tune, calm the little ones down." He leaned against the bulkhead, arms crossed, the ever-relaxed fighter of the crew. "Better than the alarms we grew up with." "I doubt it was for children," Jalen replied. "There is encoded information in the musical intervals. Whoever set this up wanted someone who could recognize patterns to find it." Urix, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. His voice was calm, resonant, and slightly otherworldly. "I can already feel the resonance of it. The hull carries memory, it hums." The others glanced at him. Urix was not human, though he had once been. His body was faintly luminous, his edges sometimes blurred, as if he stood half a step outside the material world. He was what people called a spectral, someone who had crossed the boundary between life and death, yet remained. His presence on the crew made them unusual among explorers, but invaluable when dealing with strange phenomena. Mara straightened. "Dock us with the Vigilant Dawn, Kaylin. If that beacon carries information, we will find out what it is." The Wraithlight connected to the freighter with a deep metallic thud, and the airlock cycled open. Mara led the way through, her boots ringing on the deck of the derelict. Instead of darkness and rot, as one might expect from an abandoned ship, the interior was surprisingly well preserved. Lights flickered faintly along the ceiling, as though some secondary power systems still functioned. "This is unusual," Jalen said, sweeping his scanner across the walls. "The systems are old but stable. Someone took care of this vessel." Rix rubbed a finger along a panel. Dust gathered, but the panel itself was unbroken. "If this was left here decades ago, why is it in such good condition?" They followed the main corridor toward the central hub. As they moved, they noticed inscriptions carved lightly into the walls, lines of text and symbols etched by hand rather than machine. Kaylin ran her fingers over one. "These are not corporate markings. They look personal, like journals." Mara leaned closer, reading aloud. "To all who pass through here, know that we sang to the stars and they sang back. We were not afraid." Jalen looked up sharply. "This is not just a shipwreck. This is a message, a record." The crew pressed onward. At the heart of the ship, they discovered the source of the beacon, a crystalline device linked to the ship's mainframe, glowing faintly with stored energy. From it, the melodic signal pulsed outward, filling the room with its strange, gentle tune. Urix stepped forward, his luminous eyes narrowing. "This crystal is not of human design. It feels layered, as though thought and music are woven together." Jalen crouched beside it, adjusting his scanner. "You are right. The crystal contains data, but it is not written in binary code. It is harmonic, stored in vibration. To unlock it, we will need to translate sound into information." Rix grinned. "So what you are saying is that this ship left behind a puzzle." "A puzzle," Mara said, "or a story." She placed her hand on the edge of the crystalline device. The hum deepened, and for a moment the air seemed to shimmer around them, not in a frightening way, but in a way that suggested the ship was alive with memory, ready to share what it knew. "We will unravel it," Mara said firmly. "Whatever the Vigilant Dawn wanted to tell, we will carry that story forward." The crew exchanged glances, equal parts anticipation and curiosity. They had chased echoes before, but this was different. Not a haunting, not a warning. This was an invitation. The crystalline beacon pulsed with calm rhythm, a steady thrum of notes that felt less like an alarm and more like a heartbeat. The crew of the Wraithlight stood in a circle around it, their lamps casting long shadows across the chamber. For a moment, no one spoke. It was as though they were listening to an instrument rather than a machine. "It is almost beautiful," Kaelin murmured, "like a choir that never tires." "Do not let the poetry fool you," said Jalen, kneeling beside the crystal. "This is technology. Someone designed this to last, to resonate across time. They built it to be found." He adjusted his scanner, trying to capture the harmonics, but the device emitted a burst of static in protest. He frowned and set it aside. "Ordinary tools will not do. The frequencies overlap in ways that cancel my readings." Urix stepped closer, his faint glow reflecting across the crystal surface. "Allow me." He placed his hand against the device, and the notes shifted. A higher harmony threaded into the melody, almost as if acknowledging him. The air grew warmer, filled with a subtle vibration that settled deep into the bones of everyone present. Mara watched intently. "What do you sense?" "Emotion," Urix said slowly. "Hope, curiosity. Whoever left this message infused more than knowledge into it. They poured themselves into it, so it would not only be understood but felt." "That makes it harder for me to decode," Jalen muttered, though his eyes betrayed fascination. "But it also makes it more valuable. A cultural relic, perhaps, a bridge between minds." Rix gave a low whistle. "So it is like finding a diary, a song, and a treasure chest all rolled into one." Kaelin circled the device, studying the architecture of the chamber. "Look here," she said, pointing to a series of panels arranged in a semicircle around the crystal. "These are not random control boards. They are instruments. Look at the layout, keys, strings, resonant plates. This ship was designed to be played." "Played?" Rix arched an eyebrow. "Like a guitar, more like an orchestra," Kaelin replied. "A person could sit here and perform with the ship itself. Perhaps the vessel and its crew lived with sound as a language." Mara felt a quiet thrill stir in her chest. She had always been drawn to the unexplained, to the traces of lives left behind. To stumble upon a ship that had been turned into an instrument, a vessel that sang to the stars, felt like stepping into a legend. She placed her hand on the nearest panel. The metal was cool beneath her glove, but when she pressed a sequence of shapes, tones bloomed in the air, blending with the crystal's heartbeat. Not harsh alarms or mechanical chimes, but soft, resonant notes. The ship answered. Lights flickered along the walls, not in warning but in rhythm. The vessel seemed to wake gently, like a musician lifting an instrument from its case after years of silence. "Captain," Jalen said softly, "you may have just activated its memory." The chamber shifted. Holographic shapes shimmered into the air, figures of light, faceless but clearly humanoid, moving across the room. They sat at the panels, touching keys and strings, their gestures creating the very tones that filled the air now. Kaelin's eyes widened. They turned their work into performance. Every action on this ship, navigation, engineering, communication, was expressed through music. The figures moved gracefully, their actions coordinated as though they were musicians playing together. The hull seemed to respond in harmony, each panel lighting up in turn. Rix folded his arms, watching, so they flew through space by singing, by composing, Jalen corrected. Each command was part of a larger symphony, efficiency, precision, and beauty combined. Urix tilted his head, his luminous gaze fixed on the flickering crew. They are not merely showing us how they lived. They are inviting us to join them. The holograms faded, leaving only the pulsing crystal. The silence afterward was almost heavy, as though the ship longed for the song to continue. Back aboard the Wraithlight, The crew gathered around the central table in the common room, their helmets set aside. The hum of the beacon still echoed faintly in their ears. Mara spoke first. "We have three choices. We can record what we have seen, mark the vigilant dawn as a cultural relic, and leave it for scholars. We can attempt to fully decode the harmonic language ourselves, which could take months or years. Or we can," she paused, then smiled faintly, "we can try to play the ship." Rix leaned back, smirking. "You know which choice I am voting for." Kalen's eyes shone. The panels were designed for human hands. Whoever made this wanted others to learn, not just to observe. It would be wrong not to try. Jalen rubbed his chin, deep in thought. "It is risky. If the system controls are still linked to the engines or weapons, we could damage the vessel or ourselves." But he could not hide his excitement. "It is the discovery of a lifetime. A harmonic control system that functions as both art and technology. If we can master even part of it, it would revolutionize how we understand human-machine interaction." Mara looked to Urix. "And you?" The spectral met her gaze. "The ship is waiting. It remembers its crew, but it is lonely. It called out for company, and we answered. If we leave now, it will keep singing to the stars until it fades entirely. But if we play, it may sing again." Silence hung over the table for a long moment. Then Mara nodded, her decision made. "We stay, we learn, and we play." The others smiled, each in their own way, Kalen with eagerness, Jalen with cautious curiosity, Rix with boyish enthusiasm, and Urix with quiet serenity. For once, they were not hunters or scavengers. They were students standing before a new teacher, and the stars outside seemed to lean in closer, as though waiting to hear the music return. The control chamber of the vigilant dawn seemed different when the crew returned. The crystalline beacon still pulsed with its calm rhythm, but now it sounded less like an isolated signal and more like the steady beat of a metronome, waiting for a melody to accompany it. Mara stepped into the semicircle of panels and looked around at her team. "All right," she said. "We are not here as scavengers. We are here as musicians. Let us find out what the ship wants us to play." Kalen crouched beside one of the panels, studying its arrangement of raised keys and smooth plates. The layout is logical, lower frequencies on the left, higher on the right, but they are not marked. The crew must have memorized the scales. Rix ran his hands over another panel, his thick gloves brushing the strings stretched across its frame. When he plucked one, the note rang clear and warm, resonating through the room. Lights flickered gently along the walls. "That was not bad," he said with a grin. "I think I am a natural." Jalen shook his head, smiling despite himself. "The point is not to make noise. The point is to find meaning. Each tone corresponds to a command." He tapped his scanner, which he had modified overnight. "I have programmed this to translate the frequencies into data signals. With enough samples, we may learn the structure of their language." Urix stood near the crystal, his presence faintly luminous. "Be careful not to separate the sound from the feeling. These tones are not only commands, they are emotions. The ship will respond to both." Kalen's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Then let us start with something simple. Navigation. Ships always need to know where they are." She pressed a sequence of 3 keys. The notes rose in a gentle progression, like the beginning of a lullaby. The floor beneath them vibrated softly. A moment later, a holographic star map blossomed in the air above the crystal, spinning slowly. The projection displayed the surrounding sector, dotted with ancient routes and waypoints long forgotten. Kalen gasped. "It worked." Rix clapped his hands together. "So the ship listens when we play the right tune. What happens if I do this?" He struck 3 strings at once. The notes clashed in discord, bouncing harshly against each other. The holographic map flickered violently, then collapsed into static. The walls dimmed. "Rix," Mara snapped. "Sorry," he said, raising his hands defensively. "I was just testing." Jalen bent over the panel, recalibrating. "The system does not like dissonance. It responds best to harmony." "Then we must treat it like an orchestra," Urix said softly. "One mind is not enough. It wants us to play together." They arranged themselves around the semicircle of instruments, each at a different panel. Kaelin at the navigation keys, Jalen at the data chords, Rix at the resonant strings, Mara at the tonal plates near the center, and Urix, not touching an instrument, but standing by the crystal, guiding them with subtle nods and faint gestures, as though hearing layers of sound the others could not. "On my count," Mara said, 3, 2, 1. She pressed a plate, Kaelin followed with a rising key, Jalen added a chord, and Rix plucked a resonant string. The sounds wove together, at first uncertain and clumsy, then gradually aligning. The crystal's pulse grew louder, syncing with their rhythm. The chamber responded. Holograms unfolded again, but now they were clearer. Instead of faceless figures, the crew glimpsed fragments of the original Vigilant Dawn's voyages, images of starscapes, of planets with golden skies, of great stations alive with trade and light. Each vision was accompanied by the same gentle harmonies they played, as though their notes were opening the memory of the ship itself. Kaelin's hands trembled over her keys. "We are seeing what they saw. We are reliving their journeys." "Then keep going," Mara said, her voice hushed but steady. They played longer, testing combinations, shaping their sound. When they found balance, the ship responded with warmth, images blossoming in greater detail. When they faltered, the music grew confused and the visions faded. Jalen's eyes shone with excitement. "I can map the frequencies to specific systems. This sequence here corresponds to propulsion. This one relates to environmental controls. They built their lives into melodies. Every action had to fit into the harmony of the whole." Rix chuckled, plucking a low note. "Imagine running into trouble in space and needing a choir just to raise the shields. No wonder they disappeared." Urix's voice was calm but firm. "No, do not mock them. They did not vanish from weakness. They chose to live in beauty. They believed the universe was not a battlefield but a symphony." The words lingered in the air, quieting the crew. Hours passed as they experimented, and their clumsy playing grew smoother. They learned to weave their tones together, not as professionals, but as explorers finding joy in discovery. For once there was no urgency, no threat, only the thrill of learning something lost. Finally, exhausted but exhilarated, they rested. The crystal continued to pulse, but now its rhythm had shifted subtly, as though it were breathing in time with them. Mara stood, stretching her arms. "We made progress today. Tomorrow we try again. Perhaps the Vigilant Dawn has more to show us than memories." Kaelin smiled, her eyes shining. "Perhaps it has songs no one has heard for 50 years. Jalen closed his scanner, satisfied, and perhaps those songs will tell us why this ship was left behind." Urix laid his hand on the crystal one last time before they departed. "It is grateful," he murmured. "It waited so long to be played again. It feels alive once more." As they returned to the Wraithlight for rest, the faint melody of the Vigilant Dawn followed them, not as an eerie echo, but as a companion, like a promise of more music yet to come. The next day, the crew of the Wraithlight returned to the Chamber of Instruments with renewed energy. They had slept little, but excitement chased away fatigue. The crystalline beacon awaited them, pulsing gently, like a teacher tapping a baton on the podium before beginning a lesson. "This time," Mara said, as she looked around at her team, "we will not just experiment with fragments. We will attempt a full performance. We know enough of the scales now to try something larger." Kaelin adjusted her gloves, her eyes sparkling. "A symphony instead of scattered notes." Rick stretched his shoulders and grinned. "And if we hit a few wrong chords, at least the ship has not exploded yet." Jalen rolled his eyes but smiled faintly. "We will stay coordinated. If we can lay a harmony with intent, I believe the vessel will reveal systems beyond navigation." Urix stood as before beside the crystal, luminous and steady. "The Vigilant Dawn remembers. Play with courage, and it will answer." They took their places at the semicircle of instruments. Mara lifted her hand. "Begin." Kaelin's fingers swept across the navigation keys, summoning a gentle rise of notes like the opening of dawn. Rix followed with deep resonant strings, grounding the melody with steady rhythm. Jalen pressed chords that filled the space between, weaving structure into the sound. Mara added her tones in the center, bridging their parts into unity. The crystal's pulse quickened, matching their pace. Light shimmered along the walls, running like rivers of gold. The chamber felt alive, vibrant, humming with response. Uryx's voice guided them quietly. Yes, higher here, Kaelin. Jalen, hold the chord longer. Rix, soften your rhythm. Good, now together rise. They obeyed, their music swelling in harmony. The holograms that bloomed were no longer fragments. They were vistas, a planet with silver seas, a station with spires that glowed like crystal towers, a vast nebula painted in shades of blue and green, its tendrils moving as though in time with their music. Kaelin gasped but did not falter in her playing. We are steering the memory, not just memory, Jalen said, his voice taut with awe. Look, the data readings match real coordinates. These are actual star maps. The crystal's rhythm surged, urging them onward. Mara felt the energy building, the way a performance does when it nears its crescendo. Stay with it, she commanded. Do not lose the thread. Together they drove the melody higher, richer, faster. The chamber shone like a living sun. The holographic visions expanded until they felt immersed in them, surrounded by stars, standing at the heart of a great orchestra of the cosmos. And then, with a final unison chord, the ship answered. A deep harmonic tone filled the chamber, vibrating through every plate and beam. The floor beneath them trembled, not in danger, but in resonance, as though the ship itself was singing back. The holographic stars aligned into a pattern, forming a network of luminous threads. One thread stretched outward, pointing far beyond their current sector. It pulsed brightly, a path calling to them. Jalen stared, stunned. It is giving us a course, a destination. The coordinates are not in any of our charts. Kaelin's hands hovered above the keys, trembling. It wants us to follow. Rix blinked. You mean we just played a song and the ship gave us directions to some place no one has seen before? Not just directions, said Uryx softly. His eyes glowed brighter. An invitation. They stood in silence, absorbing what they had accomplished. The vigilant dawn had not only revealed its past, but had reached into their present, pointing them towards something beyond. Mara's heart beat faster. She had captained many ventures, faced danger and discovery alike, but this was unlike anything before. A vessel abandoned for decades had sung to them, taught them its language, and now asked them to continue the song. She looked at her crew. Kaelin's eager grin, Jalen's analytical wonder, Rix's wide-eyed amusement, Uryx's calm certainty. They were ready. Mara lifted her chin. We came here to unravel a mystery. Now we have a choice. Do we record this, mark the vigilant dawn as extraordinary and move on, or do we accept its invitation and see where the song leads? Kaelin's answer was immediate. We follow. Rix nodded. Of course. Who would walk away from an adventure written in music? Jalen hesitated only a moment before his curiosity overcame caution. We may never have such an opportunity again. We follow. Finally, Mara turned to Uryx. And you? His luminous gaze met hers. I was once caught between silence and song. This ship has chosen song. So shall I? Mara smiled, a rare softness in her expression. Then it is decided. Back aboard the Wraithlight, Kaelin plotted the newly revealed coordinates. The path stretched deep into uncharted space, far beyond any known beacon or trade route. The stars along the way glowed faintly on the navigation map, like notes waiting to be played. As the engines warmed and the vessel prepared to leave the derelict behind, the melody of the vigilant dawn lingered in their ears. It was no longer just a relic's echo. It was a guide, a companion, a promise. The crew settled into their stations, anticipation hanging in the air. For the first time in a long while, Mara felt the weight of command not as burden, but as joy. They were not chasing ghosts. They were answering a call to join a greater harmony. Course set, Kaelin said, her voice alive with excitement. Shall I engage? Mara's hand rested lightly on the console. Engage. Let us see where the song takes us. The Wraithlight turned, its engines flaring, and together they followed the path of music into the unknown. The Wraithlight sailed through deep space, along the path that the vigilant dawn had revealed. The coordinates had guided them across empty stretches where no known routes passed, where stars gleamed untouched by commerce or colonization. The farther they traveled, the stronger the subtle hum in the background became, as though the universe itself were echoing the melody they had once played. Kaylin sat at the helm, her eyes bright as she studied the star map. We are nearing the final coordinates, less than 3 hours until arrival. Rix lounged in his chair, arms behind his head. I still say it feels like following breadcrumbs in a fairy tale, except instead of breadcrumbs, it is music. And instead of wolves, we might find something extraordinary, Jalen replied, adjusting his instruments. His scanner displayed harmonic interference growing stronger as they approached. There is no doubt about it. This region resonates. Something here is singing. Urix stood quietly near the viewport, his form faintly luminous as always. The song is not mechanical. It is woven into the very fabric of this place. I can feel it in the starlight. Mara, seated at the center of the bridge, folded her arms. Then let us hear it with our own ears when we arrive. When the countdown ended, the wraithlight dropped from faster-than-light travel. The sight that greeted them stole their breath. Ahead lay a planetary system unlike any charted before. At its center was a brilliant white star, its light spilling across 8 orbiting worlds. But it was not the planets that made them gasp. It was the rings. Each planet was encircled not by dust or ice, but by vast lattices of crystalline structures. They glittered in the starlight, stretching in arcs that shimmered like frozen rainbows. The rings resonated, vibrating faintly, and the sound reached the ship's hull as a deep harmonic chord. The choir of orbits, Urix whispered, his voice reverent. Kaylin leaned forward in awe. The entire system is an instrument. Jalen's readings confirmed it. The crystalline lattices are naturally resonant. When struck by solar winds, gravitational shifts, even passing meteors, they vibrate. The entire system produces harmonics. This is not coincidence. Someone cultivated these structures. They shaped planets into a symphony. Rix's jaw hung open. They built music into the sky. As they drifted deeper into the system, the ship's sensors picked up a melody woven into the harmonics, a repeating sequence, structured, intentional. The sound was not chaotic resonance. It was composition. Mara listened carefully, her brow furrowed. It matches the language of the vigilant dawn. Urix nodded. Yes, this is what the ship wanted us to find. Its crew were not just wanderers, they were pilgrims. They sought this place because it sings in their tongue. The realization settled over them with weight and wonder. The vigilant dawn had been more than a freighter. It had been part of a journey, a fleet perhaps, following music across the stars. Jalen quickly began recording. If we can translate the harmonic code, we may learn what message the system carries. It could be history, philosophy, even an invitation. Kaylin pointed to the navigation screen. The resonance is strongest around the 4th planet. The rings there are denser, brighter. I think that is where the composition is centered. Mara made her decision swiftly. Set course for the 4th planet. Let us hear what it has to say. The closer they came, the louder the harmonics grew. The wraithlight shuddered gently as the vibrations wrapped around its hull, not in violence, but in resonance, as though the ship itself were being welcomed into the orchestra. The crystalline rings glittered like stained glass cathedrals suspended in space. At the heart of the 4th planet's orbit, they found something even more astonishing, an enormous structure built within the densest part of the rings. It was not a station, not a ship, but a vast array shaped like a harp stretched across the stars. Its strings were bands of crystal kilometers long, tuned by the gravity of the planet and its moons. Kaylin's voice caught. It is an instrument the size of a world. Rix shook his head in disbelief. Who builds something like this? Who even dreams it? Urix's glow brightened, his voice steady and filled with awe. Those who believed that music was more than sound, that it was the essence of existence. They built this to make the cosmos itself sing. The crew fell silent, each one humbled before the scale of the vision. Mara finally spoke, her voice quiet but firm. The vigilant dawn was not abandoned, its journey was unfinished, and now we are here standing where it pointed us. She turned to her crew. The question is, what do we do with what we have found? Kalen's fingers tapped restlessly against the console. We play, that is what they built this for, not to be studied from a distance, but to be part of. Jalen nodded reluctantly, though his scientist's caution flickered in his eyes. It is true, the harmonics match the ship's system. If we use the language we learned, we may be able to strike the planetary harp. Rix grinned, shaking his head in amazement. From haunted ships to cosmic concerts, we really have a talent for getting into strange business. Urix closed his eyes. It will not be dangerous. The system longs to be played. It has waited ages for hands to answer it. Mara looked out at the crystalline lattice, stretching across the void like a frozen symphony. She felt the pull of it, the same way she had felt the pulse of the vigilant dawn, a sense of invitation, of promise. Her decision came as naturally as breathing. Then we will play. The wraithlight floated silently at the edge of the crystalline harp that spanned the orbit of the fourth planet. Its immense strings glimmered in the light of the star, faintly humming in natural resonance. The crew stood gathered in the central room, the display before them filled with scans and projections. Jalen adjusted his scanner, his brow furrowed. The crystal lattice is not a natural phenomenon. It was grown, layer by layer, from seed structures. The builders engineered the molecules to bond in specific resonant patterns. This entire system is a work of design. Kaelin leaned forward, her voice hushed. But who had the ability? Even the most advanced corporations of the old era could not have tuned entire orbits. This required generations. Rix whistled softly. Imagine devoting centuries to building something you could never finish in your own lifetime. That is devotion. Urix's glow deepened, his gaze fixed on the planetary harp outside. Not just devotion, faith. They believed in something greater than themselves. I can feel their intent woven into the resonance. They did not build this to rule or to profit. They built it to speak to the stars, to whatever listens. Mara folded her arms, watching the crystalline structures shimmer on the screen. The Vigilant Dawn's crew were part of this, were they not? Pilgrims, not traders. Yes, Jalen replied. Look at the harmonic language we learned from the ship. It matches the base frequencies of the rings. The Vigilant Dawn was carrying knowledge of the code. They were preparing others to use it. Kaelin's voice softened. So their ship was a school, a place to learn the music before arriving here. Rix leaned back, shaking his head in wonder. An entire civilization teaching its children not to fight or mine or conquer, but to play. That is something I never thought I would see. The discussion continued as they combed through the data. The further Jalen probed the crystalline harp, the clearer the picture became. The lattice is inscribed, he said, zooming in on the molecular structure. Tiny variations in the bonds, like etchings, they form sequences, words in the harmonic tongue. He translated a fragment onto the screen. Symbols appeared, then resolved into words through the algorithm he had built. We sing because silence is not enough. Kaelin's breath caught. They left their philosophy in the very material. Another fragment emerged. Each note is a life, each harmony a world. Together they are the chorus. Rix gave a low, reverent laugh. These people were poets as well as builders. Urix closed his eyes, the glow around him pulsing faintly in rhythm with the words. They believed the universe itself was alive, that existence was not meant to be endured but celebrated. Mara sat back, her expression thoughtful. Then the Vigilant Dawn was not abandoned. It was left behind as a guidepost, a way to ensure that others could join the chorus when the time was right. Yes, Jalen said, nodding slowly, we were not the first to be invited, but perhaps we are the first to arrive in many decades. The harp has been waiting. Later, as the ship drifted in silent orbit, the crew gathered near the forward viewport. The harp loomed across the planet, its strings catching the starlight, glowing faintly like threads of fire. It feels alive, Kaelin murmured. Like it is breathing in music even when silent. Rix crossed his arms. So they built this, what, to call someone, or simply to play forever? Perhaps both, Jalen said. Perhaps they believed that music could carry across more than space, that it could touch minds, civilizations, even realities beyond our own. Urix's voice was soft, almost a whisper. It carries across time. They are gone, yet their chorus remains. We hear it now, and in hearing it, they live again. Mara rested her hand on the glass of the viewport. She felt the faint vibration through the hull, the natural hum of the crystalline rings. It was not frightening. It was not alien. It was welcoming. They built it for us, she said quietly. Not us specifically, but for anyone who would listen. That is their legacy, to remind us that even in the vast dark, we can sing. The crew fell silent, each of them contemplating the enormity of what they had discovered. A civilization that had devoted centuries to turning a planetary system into a living orchestra. A ship that had carried the keys to understanding it. And now the Wraithlight, a small crew of wanderers, had become the inheritors of that legacy. At last, Mara straightened, her voice steady. We know who built it, we know why. Now comes the real question. She turned to her crew, her eyes shining. Do we dare to play their instrument? The crystalline harp shimmered in the light of the star, as though awaiting their answer. The Wraithlight drifted near the crystalline harp, its immense strings stretching for kilometers, glowing faintly with captured starlight. Each strand pulsed with energy, a vibration too deep for ears alone, felt instead in the bones and the heart. Mara stood at the center of the bridge, her crew arrayed around her. We have studied their intent, their legacy, she said. Now we must honor it. We will attempt to play. Kaelin's hands hovered over the navigation console, trembling not from fear but from anticipation. How do we begin? These strings are not plucked like a lute. Jalen adjusted his scanners, his eyes alight. The crystals respond to resonance. If we project the same harmonic patterns we used inside the Vigilant Dawn, the harp should answer. It is less about striking and more about coaxing. Rix chuckled softly, so not force, more like persuading a giant to dance. Urix's glow brightened, filling the chamber with calm light. Play not as conquerors, but as companions. The harp will recognize the language. They gathered again in the chamber of instruments within the Wraithlight. Though smaller than the vast hall aboard the Vigilant Dawn, it had been refitted to respond to harmonic projections. The crystal beacon they had salvaged from the derelict now stood at the center, connected to the ship's systems. Mara raised her hand. Begin as we did before. Kaelin, carry the lead. Jalen, guide the structure. Rix, ground us. I will weave between. Kaelin struck the opening tones, gentle, deliberate, rising like the dawn. Jalen added steady chords, each one measured, building foundation. Rix followed with deep rhythmic tones, steady as heartbeat. Mara entered last, blending their threads into harmony. The crystal beacon pulsed, amplifying their song, sending it outward through the ship's emitters. Outside, the planetary harp shimmered. Its strings vibrated faintly at first, then stronger, catching the projected harmonics and answering. A note resounded through the void, low, sonorous, so vast it seemed to bend the air inside their lungs. The entire planet's ring glowed brighter as the string sang. Kaelin gasped mid-play but did not falter. It is answering us. Stay with it, Jalen urged. Hold the progression. Let it grow. They did, layering sound upon sound, following the language they had learned aboard the Vigilant Dawn. The harp responded in kind. One string became 3, then 5, then a chorus of resonances rippled outward across the rings. The ship trembled with the force, not in danger but in harmony, as though it too had become an instrument. The crew's eyes widened as the space around them changed. Light poured from the vibrating crystals, forming great arcs across the void. Holographic shapes emerged, not the fragmented echoes they had seen before, but vast, complete visions. A city of luminous towers rose before them, not of stone or metal, but woven light. Beings of radiant form moved among them, singing to one another in tones that mirrored the crew's music. Ships shaped like harps and flutes drifted above, their trails shimmering like chords across the sky. Kaelin whispered, awestruck, "We are seeing their world." Rix laughed, shaking his head, "And I thought I had seen strange things." Urix's voice was soft, reverent, not illusion, memory woven into resonance. They built the harp to remember themselves, to be remembered. The visions shifted with the music, scenes of teaching, of children learning to play crystalline instruments, scenes of vast gatherings where thousands joined voices in harmony, scenes of departure, ships leaving the luminous cities, carrying the music outward. Then the visions showed the vigilant dawn, whole and bright, crewed by figures both human and luminous. They sang as they traveled, their ship glowing like a note carried across the night. Mara's throat tightened. They were part of this. Our kind was part of this. The crescendo came as the harp strings reached full resonance. The light spread across the system, each planet's rings joining in. The entire star system became a symphony, its harmonics so vast they resonated in the marrow of their bones. The crew stopped playing, but the harp continued, sustaining the song as though it had awakened fully after centuries of silence. Kaylin lowered her hands slowly, tears glimmering in her eyes. "It is alive, we woke it." Jalen's voice was hushed, trembling with awe. "We did not just play it, we rejoined it. The system remembers." Rix gave a stunned laugh. "I will never complain about our jobs again." Urix's glow shone brightly, his form more solid than ever. "The builders are gone, but their song endures. Through us, it continues." Mara looked at her crew, then out at the radiant symphony that filled the heavens. The choice they had made to follow the invitation had brought them here, to this moment, where the boundary between past and present blurred into harmony. She spoke quietly, as though to the builders themselves. "Your song is heard." And the universe answered in music. The planetary harp continued to sing long after the crew had lifted their hands from the instruments. Its strings glowed with steady light, resonating across the crystalline rings, across the planets, across the very star itself. The entire system hummed in harmony, a sustained chord that filled the void with living music. On the bridge of the Wraithlight, no one spoke at first. They sat in silence, listening, hardly daring to breathe. The sound was not deafening, it was encompassing. It felt as though their own hearts had synchronized with the harp's rhythm. Kaylin was the first to whisper, "It is not fading." Jalen scanned his readings with wide eyes. "The resonance has stabilized. It is no longer dependent on our projection. The harp has entered a self-sustaining state." Rix leaned back slowly, shaking his head in disbelief. "So, we lit a fire, and now the whole sky is burning with song." Urix's glow pulsed gently, not burning, living. It has awoken from its slumber. Then, a change. The crystalline harp shifted tones, moving from the chord they had sustained into a sequence of notes. Not chaotic, structured, deliberate. The resonance formed a melody, repeating, rising, falling, then returning again. Jalen straightened sharply. "It is a pattern, a message." Kaylin leaned closer, her hands trembling, like the beacon aboard the vigilant dawn. "Yes," Jalen said, excitement building in his voice. "Exactly like it. This is a response, something triggered by the full awakening." Mara's gaze stayed fixed on the shimmering strings outside. "Can you translate it?" "Working on it." Jalen's fingers flew across his console. Symbols formed on the display, then resolved slowly into words through the harmonic algorithm. The crew read them together as they appeared on the screen. "If you hear this, you are not alone." Kaylin let out a soft gasp. More words followed, unfolding in rhythm with the harp's melody. "We built the chorus so that those who came after us would know joy. Play, and you join us. Sing, and we are together." Rix blinked rapidly, his grin unsteady. They left this for anyone who could figure it out. Take what is ours, not as inheritance, but as companionship. Let the music guide you to harmony with one another and with the stars. The harp's tone deepened, and the final words shimmered into being. "Wherever song endures, so do we." The bridge was utterly still. Each of them absorbed the message in their own way. Kaylin wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. They knew they would be gone, and they still chose to leave beauty behind. Jalen's voice was quiet but filled with awe. Not technology, not weapons, not archives of power. They left a song. That was what they thought mattered most. Rix gave a short, unsteady laugh. "Maybe they were wiser than us." Urix's glow brightened until he seemed almost radiant. "They live still, not in flesh, but in harmony. I can feel them." When we played, they answered. Mara's expression softened, the edges of her usual sternness giving way to wonder. She looked out at the harp, shimmering like a bridge between stars. Then we were not chasing ghosts. We were being invited to join a chorus that never ends. As if in response, the harp shifted once more. Its melody lengthened, growing more complex, until arcs of light burst outward from the crystalline rings. The arcs spread like rivers, weaving into a lattice around the planet. Kaelin leaned forward, eyes wide. Captain, something is forming. The arcs coalesced into a sphere of light, vast and translucent. Within it, new structures began to shimmer, smaller crystalline arrays, growing rapidly, assembling themselves into intricate shapes. Jalen's readings surged. It is constructing something, using stored energy in the lattice, guided by the resonance we triggered. What is it building? Mara asked, her voice steady despite her racing heart. The light solidified into a form, a vessel. Sleek, luminous, shaped like an instrument itself. Its hull shimmered like crystal, its lines curved in graceful arcs. It pulsed with the same harmonic glow as the harp. Rix's mouth fell open. They left a ship. Kaelin's voice trembled. Not just a ship, a gift. Urix nodded slowly, reverently. The builders promised companionship. They left behind a vessel, waiting for those who could awaken the chorus. It is not theirs anymore, it is ours. The wraithlight hovered in orbit as the crystalline ship completed itself, glowing with the light of the star. It looked less like machinery and more like a living note made solid. For the first time in her long career, Mara felt her voice fail her. She could only whisper. They built something that waits for players, not for rulers. Her crew looked at her, at one another, then back at the harp and the ship that now gleamed among the stars. Their journey had begun with a derelict. Now it had led them to a gift beyond measure, a vessel woven of harmony, carrying the legacy of an entire civilization. And the harp continued to sing, its music filling the heavens, as though the builders themselves were applauding. The crystalline vessel hovered in orbit, suspended like a note frozen in space. Its surface shimmered with prismatic light, arcs and curves reflecting the star's brilliance across the rings of the fourth planet. The hum from the planetary harp resonated through the wraithlight as if inviting the crew closer. Mara took a deep breath. "We board at our own risk," she said, though her voice betrayed excitement, "but I think it has waited long enough for us." Kaelin was first to volunteer. "I am not letting anyone else have first dibs. I want to see inside." She grinned, almost like a child opening a secret door. Rix muttered, "I vote for two at a time. No one gets eaten by musical space magic." Urix, calm as ever, floated alongside them. "There is no threat here, only resonance, only invitation." Jalen's eyes shone. "If this ship responds to the harmonics we projected, we may find systems unlike anything we have ever seen. Navigation, communication, propulsion, all of it integrated into song." Mara nodded. "Then let's go carefully." They approached the vessel in a small shuttle. Its surface was smooth, translucent, and glowing with ever-changing patterns of light. As they drew near, a section of the hull shimmered and became transparent, revealing a passage within. It felt alive, responsive, as if sensing their arrival. Kaelin's eyes widened. "It opened for us." Jalen adjusted the sensors. "It is like it recognizes us as players. The resonance of our presence matches the code left by the builders." They stepped aboard. The interior was breathtaking. Curved hallways of crystalline panels stretched in arcs, shimmering softly, pulsing gently with harmonic frequencies. The floor seemed to flow beneath their feet, shifting like water with each step. "This is not a ship in the usual sense," Rix muttered. "It feels alive." Urix floated ahead, guiding them. "It is alive, but not in flesh. Its consciousness is harmonic, shaped by intention, memory, and resonance. It is a bridge between thought, music, and travel." They explored room after room. Consoles were no longer just panels, they were arrays of strings, plates, and resonators. Every system required touch, sound, or coordinated motion. The propulsion array resembled an enormous organ, each note projected energy that would guide the vessel. The navigation deck shimmered with light-mapped stars, waiting to respond to harmonic input. Kaylin ran her fingers along a curved control panel. A gentle note echoed, and a holographic map of the surrounding galaxy unfolded. It is all in music. Every command, every calculation, it is harmonized. Jalen leaned over another console. The builder's designs integrate knowledge, creativity, and intuition. It is not just a ship, it is a living instrument. Flying it is performing a composition. Rix plucked a string embedded in the hull. The note rang out, and a door on the opposite side of the room slid open silently. And apparently opening doors counts as music too. Mara laughed softly. Every action is a note, Rix. Pay attention. We are about to learn the first song of a new voyage. Urix's glow brightened as he moved to the central chamber. This room is the heart of the vessel. Here we synchronize with its frequency. Together we may harmonize and awaken its full potential. Kaylin, Jalen, Rix, and Mara joined him. They each placed a hand on the resonant surfaces, and the vessel responded. Light arced across the hallways, streams of sound rippled along the hull, and the hum of the harp outside merged with the ship's own melody. It was not frightening, it was exhilarating. The vessel seemed to recognize them, to welcome them as companions rather than intruders. Mara looked around at her crew. We've followed a song across the stars, we've awoken the harp and found a gift. Now we are ready to play the next movement. The crystalline ship pulsed brighter, as though affirming her words. Kaylin whispered, awestruck, "We are going to fly this thing." "Not just fly," Urix said, his voice reverent. "We are about to perform among the stars." Rix grinned, his usual humor returning. "Well then, musicians, let's see what a galactic symphony sounds like." Mara placed her hands lightly on the controls. "Set the frequency. Engage the chorus. Let's begin our first voyage." The ship thrummed beneath their touch, alive with anticipation. Outside, the planetary harp continued its song, now harmonizing with the new vessel. The star system itself seemed to glow brighter, joining in the chorus. And as the Wraithlight's crew embarked on this new journey aboard the crystalline vessel, the stars themselves appeared to lean closer, listening to the music of those who dared to follow it.